we do know our elected leaders have really tried to help us navigate this crazy past year, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we're on the back side of this. Always great to have Congressman Andy Levin with us here on the MegaCast. Of course, he represents the 9th District. Thank you for being with us. How are you? How was your 4th?
Hey, Ronnie, it was great. We only had one parade that, survived the late COVID period. It was in Huntington Woods, and it was wonderful to march in that parade. And it was, I guess, a little bittersweet this year because that's the community that Danny Fenster is from, my constituent who is stuck in a horrible prison in Burma or Myanmar. And so just the way that community has lifted up Danny, supported his cause, the way his family has rallied the whole community, it's so inspiring. And, we celebrate the birthday of our country, our own freedom. And so we sort of demanded freedom for one of our people. And it felt perfect. And we're just bound and determined to get him the heck out of there. So it was a special 4th in that way.
And Congressman, can you give us a little bit of background when these situations happen? What work can you do behind the scenes to try to help secure his safe return?
Well, so there's a number of parts to that, Ronnie. There's the official part of working with our State Department, other parts of our government, our embassy in Burma, our ambassador there, Tom Vida. I email or talk to him multiple times every week. Our special envoy for hostages and detainees, Roger Karstens, he visited the Fenster family with me for hours. He's got staff working on this full time. So there's all that official work, and that's very important. Then there's the work that, as a congressperson, you're out there in the public trying to encourage people, educate people, serve people. And so just getting the message out, like we were able to get Bono and U2 to, join in the chorus demanding Danny's freedom, and my colleagues in the Congress. So there's kind of that, I guess you'd say, just kind of, megaphone of trying to raise up the issue. And then there's also sort of back channel things that you can't really talk about publicly, but we are certainly, let's just say, engaging any party that might be able to influence the military in Burma to let Danny go free. And that's a very important part too. And we're certainly pursuing that very actively.
And hopefully when people hear of Danny's story, that they come to realize the freedom of the press that we have here in the United States. And I know that journalists aren't well liked or well trusted, over the recent decade or so, but we have to say and appreciate that we do have a voice here in America, and for one of our own to, take on that challenge in a foreign country, to give the people there a voice. Despite knowing the dangers, we have to honor and respect that. And I will say, I remember reading the book Laura and Lisa Ling. They wrote after Laura Ling's capture in North Korea, and all the back channels that are going on, the political side of some of these captures, so that we know that there's so much more work that you and your team and others in DC are doing to try to hopefully bring him home safely. So a little bit of, overshadowing, though, for the holiday season for you.
Well, but, just the connection you just made. Look, you and Tyler are free to, if you find out facts, information, the truth that's troubling to the powers that be, to me, to the mayor of a city, to the governor, to the president, you are free to tell it, to get the story out. And there is no democracy or even really good governance, really, is there, without a free press. And so here's this kind of inspiring young man from Michigan, Danny Fenster, who had actually been in Burma a couple years. He didn't go there because of the coup. He was there before. And he was reporting, he was editing, he worked for, a web news service, and he was getting the truth out. And it's so crucial for the whole world that whether it's Americans or Burmese people, doing that work. And so it really does tie into the 4th of July because, it's about our freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. And so I think that while we're upset that he's there and we want, we're fighting to get him out, his work does symbolize what the holiday's all about. So it ties to.
How's his family doing?
Oh, I mean, on one hand, I'll say amazing. They're doing amazingly well. They're so stalwart. You can't believe, Ronnie, they've got like the siblings, the cousins, the in-laws. They've got, they've divided up the work. Who's working with the press? Who's working with the human rights groups? Who's working with, the government? I mean, it's just wonderful the way they've come together. But, you can only imagine how hard it is. And especially for Buddy and Rose, for his parents. I mean, I've got 4 kids. I really can't imagine, even though I'm sitting there talking to them all the time. It's just to have your child in that situation is a horrible thing. And so we just have to focus on getting him out. But he's, you can look at everything glass half full, glass half empty, right? I mean, glass half empty, all this, he was captured on May 24th, and a month and a half later, he has still not been granted in-person consular access. Our American government people have not even been able to see him in person and visit with him. It's against international law. It's horrible. Glass half full, we started to get phone access each week, and his family is able to get on the phone with him. And you can just imagine, more than anything else, for Danny to actually hear his sibling, his parents, talk to them, just lifted his spirits so much. And so hopefully the weekly access this week will take place tomorrow morning, Burmese time, which is late tonight, our time. By 11 at night, it's already tomorrow morning in Myanmar. So, the family's just done an amazing job of keeping his story out there, and they're getting along as best they can. But we're just all one big team America, trying to bring our boy home. So.
Well, with that, we, everyone, I will say, the entire community, the entire state of Michigan has really been behind this family. And in telling his story, they're also telling the story of the people he was there to report on. So let's hope he gets home safely. And but it continues the conversation about the conditions of what's happening and why he was there to begin with. But if I can kind of shift the conversation a little bit and talk about the conditions here locally, it's been a crazy few weeks. We've had, the massive flooding that went on in, Wayne County, as well as parts of Macomb County. And now, again, we had the big storms yesterday with so many, over 100,000 people without power.
Including me.
You don't have electricity either?
Oh, wow.
Not only that, Roddy, my basement flooded worst ever last month. Oh, my God. My wife said the water was coming in, like a window well in the basement. It was up 2/3 of the glass. So she said, get outside with this bucket and start bailing, the window well. And I went outside, and what I saw, I said, honey, you have to come just look at this. Because our backyard, and we live up on top of kind of a hill in Bloomfield Township, our backyard was like a lake like we never saw. Wow. And so we had, she has, my wife's a big gardener. She just finished the Michigan State Extension Master Gardener thing. And she has, so she's all into it. So she has a rain gauge, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
And I can verify that I think her gauge only goes up to 6 inches, and it was overtopped from that one storm. I mean, it was unbelievable. We never got that much rain at one time in 15 years of living at that house. And then yesterday, I'm sitting in my office in Warren. It took me an hour to drive home to Bloomfield. I got most of the way because, but I started to try to go up Inkster. Nope, closed at Northwestern. Then I went back couldn't get to Franklin, started going up Telegraph. had to abandon that, went through the neighborhoods in Franklin, huge trees fallen just straight, nobody even there yet to deal with it, you
Yeah.
know? And I weaved my way. And so it's bad. I mean, there's these extreme weather events seem to be happening more and more.
And
And
I
I'm
know
afraid it's
the
only
governor
increased.
tried to blame this last storm and the flooding that happened on the freeways and, in some of the communities in Detroit on global warming. But at the end of the day, our infrastructure here in the state of Michigan, it just stinks. I mean, it just stinks. So we now have this huge plan to try to fix some of these issues. How do we get it done? How do we get it from on paper talking about it to actually fixing it?
Well, I really agree with you, and I am bound and determined to do it. And I'm really excited about it, although it's going to be a super tightrope act in the Congress and with the Biden administration. So we have multiple balls in the air here. We have the president's bipartisan agreement, and I'm all for that, right? But that only covers a small portion of what he proposed in the American Jobs Plan and the America's Families Plan. And then we have the Invest in America Act, which is the surface transportation reauthorization bill, which we have to do. We have to reauthorize it. And that includes a lot on highways, roads, bridges, transit, rail, wastewater, and drinking water infrastructure. And I'm really delighted that the bill contains over $20 million in funding for projects in the 9th District that I proposed after consulting with all 21 cities, townships, and villages in the district. So, it's everything from 11 million for the big Mound Road project in, the innovation project in Macomb, to smaller funding for roads throughout the community in, all over, like, for example, 14-mile in stretches of 14-mile, both in, over in Macomb County and over in Oakland County. So, and two of my amendments to promote electric vehicle charging development were included. So we've got that. But I think the bottom line is this. What's going to happen is we'll finalize the president's bipartisan plan, and then we'll finalize a budget bill for fiscal year 2022 that will have more of his infrastructure and human infrastructure. And then we'll try to pass both of them. And you've got a situation where, God bless Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer, their kind of progressive end is saying, well, the bipartisan thing's okay, but we've got to do the more ambitious stuff that, after all, the president proposed. And you got the more moderate people saying, well, we're focused on the bipartisan thing. And so they have to do both. They have to figure out a way to get them together. And there'll be a lot of compromising and a lot of sausage making here in the coming weeks. And my prediction is it'll be after we come back from the August recess that we try to finalize all this and get it passed. But look, we got the American Rescue Plan passed, $1.9 trillion that is whipping us out of this COVID recession. And, in 1 week from today, parents are going to start getting checks for all their kids, which we've never done in this country before. Like $300 a month for kids under 6, and $250 a month for kids 6 and over. And that's going to help so many people. So I really think that the president's plans are what we need to build our infrastructure, as you say, which desperately needs it. But also more broadly, you just have to take the issue of childcare. Women's participation in the labor force. I'm not talking about unemployment, Ronnie. I'm talking about whether they're even in the workforce to be counted as employed or unemployed, hit the lowest level in decades because there was no childcare, there was no school. And, in our society, it's still a little bit sexist. I mean, the women do the bulk of the caregiving, and they literally had to drop out of the workforce to deal with it. We've got to have childcare available and reopen our schools to, really fully get people back to work. And so we're really focused on that as well.
So with that, though, in creating this safety net, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis, we've also created a new crisis in that we have businesses that can't keep their doors open because they can't get employees right now because they're on unemployment. And the other problem with unemployment, people are taking the time because now here in the state of Michigan, you have to show that you've applied for jobs. So they're going on, taking up the time of employers scheduling interviews and then not showing up. One business owner told us 75% of the people don't show up for the interview. They just want to say that, hey, they applied for a job. And so in doing that, we've created another crisis. And when it comes to like our infrastructure, are we going to even have the workers to do the work?
Hey, if you're offering a good union job with union wages and benefits, people will show up. I guarantee it. I mean, a lot, so a couple things about all this. Number one, we just saw the jobs numbers from last month's report. There was a massive increase in employment in hospitality, in retail. So the data show that huge numbers of people are going back to work. I hear this too, Ronnie, believe me, from business owners all the time.
You probably hear it a lot more than we do.
Well, but the data just don't. What the studies and the data show is a couple of things. Number one, that the extra money for unemployment and the checks to people are what saved untold number of businesses. It kept money in the economy. It put money in people's pockets, and they spent it. And so it kept businesses alive. And the data also show that people are not, this idea that people are lazy or gaming the system or don't want to work, there just really aren't data to support that. People are going back to work, and it's interesting if people actually believe in markets. Do people really believe in capitalism, in Econ 101, in supply and demand? Wages have been so low for so long. Workers may just be demanding a little more. And isn't that what capitalism is actually supposed to be? I mean, in other words, we haven't even, in the House, we passed the Raise the Wage Act to gradually increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025. But that hasn't gone into effect. The Senate hasn't done anything. But I think workers are partly just saying, pay me what I'm worth. And so that's just like a back and forth that's how the economy is sort of supposed to work. So people are going back to work in huge numbers. And I mean, let me just put it this way. Joe Biden, first 5 months of a presidency, added 3 million net jobs to the economy. No president has ever done that.
Well, we won't get into this, but we're coming out of a pandemic. Come on. People were not working at crazy numbers because we were in the middle of a pandemic.
Absolutely.
So come on, let's not be fair. Let's be fair here. Other people didn't have the same situation. But if I can ask you too, because one of the situations, I didn't even realize this until recently. We were talking with the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections yesterday, and we're talking about the stimulus checks that are going to the prisoners. And these stimulus checks were designed to help the American people get on their feet, right? Pay their mortgage, pay their car payments, put food on the table. Well, if all of that is already taken care of for the prisoners behind bars, why are we getting that money, especially for people who are maybe on, death row or not here in Michigan, but life sentences that aren't going to be getting out? Why are they getting that money when there are people on the outside who haven't received any of that money?
Oops, I'm not sure what you mean about the last part about people on the outside not getting any money, because You mean because they're too wealthy or something?
No,
Or I'm not sure what you mean
and it's
by that.
some people qualify and some people don't. But we have prisoners, and this was brought up that
So you mean the prisoners otherwise qualify?
yes, they're qualifying because, and I know there was
Not
an issue with
because they're
IRS saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't give them this money because it's not going to help the economy. It's not helping keep them in their homes. It's not helping them, make a car payment because all of that is taken care of. They have health care behind bars. And the spokesperson was saying,
do you think some prisoners are parents?
well, sure they are. And I would think some of them are also going to be able to get some of the child tax care money, but not all of them. And so if that's the case, why not have it directly go to those on the outside that are taking care of those kids?
Right. Well, the latest I checked, if you're a parent and you have a kid on the outside, if you have a bank account, you can use the money for your kid, whether you're in prison or not. But this is a teensy part of the money. It's not something, to be honest with you, that I considered. We certainly didn't have a debate and affirmatively decide, let's give this money to people in prison. It just, if it's an impact, right, of something we did, it's, we could take a look at it and see whether, I guess you're proposing that prisoners ought to affirmatively be excluded from getting any of this money. And that, maybe you're right, but it would be something I'd have to look at and study, because it's not like Congress said, let's give money to people incarcerated. It's just not something that came up. And so it's certainly worth looking at.
Yeah, and that was exactly what the spokesperson said. And by the way, this has happened under Republicans and Democrats, so it's not pointing the finger at anyone. I think people just didn't think about it. And the concern, too, is now you have additional money that's floating around within the prisons that, could help lead to a surge of violence. They can buy, illegal cell phones and drugs and things of that nature to try to get into the prisons. So if it becomes a bigger issue, is that something that could be considered by some of our elected leaders?
But it's I'm just thinking about this philosophically, right? And more broadly. So your position would be that all prisoners should be destitute because because this isn't the source. Prisoners go to prison, they have money. Who knows how much money they have in a bank account? Why would this little bit of money all of a sudden be the source of drugs and guns? If they already have a bank account, this isn't going to them as cash in a prison. That's not how it works, right? It's going, if they get it, it's going to some bank account. Well, prisoners already can have bank accounts, right? So should we try to take away all the money from someone when they go to prison so that they can't act? This is something like I never thought about before, but it doesn't seem like this is the main part of the overall question, right?
You're right, though. It was something I hadn't thought of either until we had the conversation. And because by them having more access to money, then it gives them, there's an underground economy within our prisons. And so the concern with some of the prison officials is that this is allowing some of our prisoners to be able to buy or give money to people on the outside to be able to get drugs, to try to bring them into the prisons, or to get some illegal contraband. It's giving them additional resources and finances to be able to do so. So just something to put on your radar. We don't have to debate it here. It was an interesting question. And, as the prison spokesperson said, this is an issue with the elected leaders. It's not anything that they had any control over.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting question. I'd have to learn all about like what access prisoners have to money, their own money, and how they would get it, use it for those purposes. As I said, prisoners they wouldn't have any more access to this money than they have to any other money they have, right? So they already have potentially bank accounts or anything, they have access to their own money. This money doesn't magically go to them in the prison. more than any other money they have access to. So we should look at it. So that's what you said, and I think you're right.
So with that, Congressman, I apologize. I didn't mean to put you on the spot at all. This is, one of
No,
those things. It's
it's all
Republican,
good.
Democrat.
All
It's
good.
not a political party thing,
Yeah.
because we always enjoy speaking with you here on the show. And so, if I can ask you anything else you want people to know before we let you go, there are so many things that you're always juggling, though.
Well, we're working on a lot of things. I would just say that we, I reintroduced my deferred removal for Iraqi nationals, including Minorities Act, with my Republican colleague John Molinar from Midland. And this is an issue I've been working on since I came to Congress, because I represent more Iraqi-born people than any other member of the House in of the most of all 435 districts. And a lot of them, of course, in my district are Chaldeans, and I'm so proud, that that's the case. But there are also Sunni and Shia and other Iraqis. But there was this whole effort during the Trump administration to sort of mass deport people, Iraqis who'd ever done anything wrong, and it was ripping up families, people who had been here for decades. And it was, and one of my constituents ended up dying after they were sent back to Iraq because they were diabetic and they had all kinds of problems. And it was so sad. So we've reintroduced this, and I'm hoping that we can work with the Biden administration to go back to the way all Democratic and Republican administrations dealt with it before, which was, if they came across an individual who was really, a serious problem and needed to be deported, they did that, but that they weren't trying to find, any Iraqi-born person and deport them. And so I think we're making progress with the administration, and we're reintroducing our bill, which would just try to give Iraqi nationals their day in immigration court before, sort of the most American thing, right? Treat each person as an individual, give them their day in court. And so that's, we're working on that, and I'm very hopeful about that. But I just, I'm very excited about this moment. I think that the legislature finally appropriated the money for our schools that we sent to the state, and that's really terrific. And a lot of other funds will be coming, like to parents through the child tax credit. And we just have to keep going to try to help America develop out of this very difficult time we've been in. And it's so great to be out and about and be with people again. And but at the same time, I'm very worried about the Delta variant. And I just want to tell everybody who's watching or listening that any death now from COVID is a preventable death, 100% preventable death. Please, if you haven't gotten vaccinated, get vaccinated, get your kids vaccinated. I just want to save lives and help make sure we can keep our economy open. And we've got a lot of areas in our state, Ronnie, that still a lot of people aren't vaccinated. And so I just want to go talk to your doctor, talk to your faith leader, talk to your mom. We love you all. We want you all to be healthy. So please, these vaccines are incredible the way they work. And everybody go get vaccinated so we can all stay safe.
So, Congressman, one last question for you here on the
Yes.
MegaCast before we say goodbye. What do you think is going to be the silver lining for you and your constituents coming out of the pandemic? Anything good?
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that we both learned a lot of ways to do business and do community work that we'll keep some of the good stuff from it, some of the technology, some of the efficiency. And at the same time, wow, how much were we reminded what a social creature human beings are, and how much we need each other. We need to look each other in the eye, hear each other breathing, hug each other, shake hands. So I think we really need to learn from this how important public health is as well. I don't know about you, Ronnie or Tyler. We realize in my household, not only did no one get the flu, none of us even got a cough or a cold over the whole 15 months because we were masking and social distancing. And okay, that doesn't mean I want to mask and social distance forever, but it was a powerful lesson, right? That we can have a lot of power over our own health. And I think we're all going to take that, out with us into the future. And I encourage everybody to be, take good care of yourselves and, respect public health measures. I hope when all the politicization of this recedes into the past, that we will be ready for a next pandemic or, because it'll come, and we'll know we have to have the PPE in advance. We'll be, racing from the beginning with the science to develop whatever vaccines or medicines we need. And I think there's a huge silver lining, Ronnie, in how let's make things in America again, right? Let's make everything we need for our security here again. I mean, that's great for jobs, for patriotism, and for us to just flat out be ready. So I think there are a lot of silver linings here, even as much tragedy as there has been in losing well over 600,000 of our fellow Americans to this horrible virus.
Well, let's hope we only have one pandemic per lifetime, so we don't see the next one, right?
I hope so. But I don't know if you're hesitant to talk about global warming, but that global warming actually, it will contribute to a greater likelihood of zoonotic diseases, arising and spreading. And so we have to take the science really seriously and be ready.
Well, Congressman, we always appreciate your time. A great ringtone, by the way.
That's my wife's ringtone.
Well, we hope you get electricity back soon.
Thanks. She's probably called me to say, I'm coming to your office because I can't do anything at the house.
Right, exactly. You look for those neighbors with that light on. You're like, oh, by the way, can I stop over for lunch today? We so appreciate your time as always.
All right, take care.